How do you start a spiritual conversation? I'm going to give you 3 tips to get the conversation started. Number 1, ask worldview questions. A worldview question is a question that determines what your worldview is based on how you answer the question. These are questions like, is there a God? What is a human being? What is the universe? What is the meaning of human history? These questions are a shared interest throughout all of humanity, and people love to express their own thoughts and opinions. So give them the opportunity and invite them to answer these questions. When they give you answers, ask them how they arrived to those conclusions. You might be able to mention to them that the way that you would answer the question is different than the way that they would answer the question. That might inspire curiosity for them to ask you what your answer would be. This is a perfect way to kickstart a spiritual conversation, and you can invite them to ask questions of their own. That way you're both on equal footing. You're both 2 human beings searching for the answers to difficult questions. Try not to have a teacher versus student mentality. This is a lot more inviting and respectful to the other person. Not to mention, it's very wise to gather as much information as you can if you really want to have a decent spiritual conversation. Number 2, ask personal questions. Ask them about their dreams or their hopes or their aspirations, and ask them why those things are so important to them. Ask them what they live for, or what they want their life to be about, or what they want to ultimately leave behind. When you talk about goals and values, you can ask farther about what makes those things valuable in the first place. You may be causing them to consider something they've never considered before. You can ask them what makes them truly happy and why. You can ask them if they have any regrets in life. Depending on their answer, you might be able to ask them why they regret those things, and that could lead the conversation to a particular area in apologetics, maybe the moral argument or otherwise. And then finally, you could ask them if they're afraid to die, and whether they are or they're not, ask them why. You might think that people don't like answering personal questions, but in the right setting and with an inviting demeanor, most people prefer to talk about what matters. And lastly, number 3, you can talk about apologetics. I have found this incredibly useful for getting my foot in the door to a spiritual conversation. Ask them if they have a worldview and how they logically arrived to that position. If they're not sure what you're talking about, then explain what you mean. Ask if they've ever investigated the claims of different worldviews or religions. Have they read any religious literature or philosophical books? Are they aware of the lofty claims that these worldviews make? And if they're unfamiliar, share some examples and get their thoughts. From a Christian perspective, you can actually explain to them that Christians are commanded to share and defend their faith with reason. Generally, this raises some eyebrows. For whatever reason, people don't typically associate logic and reason with any sort of religious view. And so when you explain to them that Christianity is built on a foundation of logic and reason, that will inspire either questions or objections, and that gets the conversation going. So to quickly recap, you can ask worldview questions, you can ask personal questions, and you can talk about apologetics. If you have an interest or a passion for apologetics, share that passion. People are drawn to passion, and these are practical, disarming ways to begin spiritual conversations. Just remember to ask a lot of questions. Gather as much information as you can. Try to gauge how the other person might be feeling. And if you need to back off the gas a little bit, don't be afraid to. You can always return to these lofty topics. If at all possible, develop and maintain that relationship. And if they ask a hard question and you get stumped, you can refer to this video here. If you feel nervous, don't worry, everyone does. But it's important to get started. And the more you get started, the more practice you get, the more naturally all of this will come to you. Remember that it's the Great Commission, not the Great Suggestion. So let's get out there and share what we believe with other people by starting spiritual conversations. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.